Okay, in this lesson, we're going to talk about skeletal anatomy, and we're going to look at the structure and the functions of basically how bones work. So before we get started, the first thing you need to check out is this word, osteo. It's a Greek term, comes from the word osteon, and it literally means bone. And you're going to see this all throughout your anatomy and physiology. So anytime you see osteo, know that we're actually referring to bone. Well, bones are made up of different types of cells. You have osteoblasts, osteocytes, and osteoclasts. Here are the differences between these three. You've got osteoblasts, and these are the ones that construct or build bone tissue. Then you have osteocytes, which are just bone cells. And then you have osteoclasts, and these are the cells that break down bone cells. And the easiest way to remember this are that blasts build and that clasts kill. Also inside bone, you're going to have the intercellular substances called matrices. You have an organic matrix and you have an inorganic matrix. In the organic matrix, there's where carbon is, but also it's where glycoproteins and proteoglycans are stored. In the inorganic matrix, this is what the intercellular substance that gives bones their hardness. And the reason is because this is where the binding of salts happens. And this is also where there's like a reservoir for different types of calcium salts. So you have calcium phosphate and calcium hydroxide, and they're stored in the inorganic matrix inside bone. So let's see how bones and the cells in the bone all work together. Inside bone, you're going to have two different types of bone. You have compact and you have trabecular or spongy bone. And here's kind of the differences between the two. Well, first off, compact bone is dense tissue, and it's going to be towards the outside of the bone, and they're made of these things called osteons, which is the basic unit of compact bone. Well, trabecular bone, it's spongy, and you're going to find this near joints and in log bone. You'll see this term lamello, which is basically the organization of stuff in layers. And in terms of spongy bone, you have this stuff that's made in these multiple linear layers. And what happens is as they're made, let's draw you bone here. As they're made, you'll get these linear layers of porous tissue. And what happens is, or porous bone, I should say, and inside these spaces, that's going to be where the red bone marrow is. So this is the end of the bone, and you'll see this in another lesson, but this is the difference between this and then you've got your compact bone. You can see that there's compact bone here, but then you can also see spongy bone here. So let's look at an osteon. The osteon, like I said, it's the basic unit of compact bone, and it looks like this. You have a big tube, or you have it's a dense cylinder, essentially what it is, and they're cylindrical, and inside you have like a main channel. And what this channel is called the Haversian canal right here. And the Haversian canal has a couple of things in it. It's got nerves, and then it's also got blood vessels. Well, inside an osteon, you have these concentric circles of osteocytes, and they are made like this. They're made, and they go all the way around. And this area right here is called a lacuna. And essentially what that is it's just the layer of the osteocytes, and they're made in concentric circles. And then coming from there, you will have something called canaliculi. And these are the blood vessels that go across and through the layers of the osteon, and they provide nutrients, and then they also take away wastes. So as you can see, there's no direct blood supply to these osteocytes out here. So you have these are the canaliculi, and they run kind of all the way across, and you'll have them kind of down here, and you'll also have them down here, and they run they're just going to provide the blood directly to these osteocytes on the outside of the osteon. So this may seem like a silly question, but what are the actual functions of bone? Well, first off, they offer a site of attachment for ligaments and tendons. And this is what helps muscles and bones to attach to each other. And remember, ligaments attach bone to bone and tendons are bone to muscle. But there's got to be a way for the bones, the ligaments, and the tendons to all work together. And that is one of the functions here. It also works as a mechanical leverage system. So if you want to lift your arm and you want to take steps and you want to move around or you want to bend over, all of these systems work together cohesively, and the bones allow the body to do that. The other thing it does is they offer protection for different organs. So the cranium protects the brain, the spinal cord is protected by vertebra. You have the thoracic cavity, which this is for your heart and lungs. And then you also have your pelvis, which helps to protect some of the internal organs. Another thing that bones do is they're a reservoir for minerals. So calcium and phosphorus are stored in these bones, and so when the body needs them, they go to the bone to get them out. One final thing that bones do is that they are responsible for a process called hematopoiesis, which is the creation of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. It's the site of bone marrow, and this is where all of this happens. So let's recap. Anytime we're talking about anatomy and physiology, we always want to talk about structure and function. So what is the structure of bone? Well, it's made up either of spongy or compact bone. Compact bone is made of osteons, and they are cylinders of osteocytes. Remember, you have the Haversian canal, which goes right through the middle, and this is what houses the nerves and the blood vessels in bone. You've got spongy bone, and that's where the red bone marrow is, and this is the site of hematopoiesis. So that's that creation of those red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the platelets. And then when we talk about function, we're talking about that bones are responsible for movement. They're responsible for providing support and structure. They're also a mineral reservoir. And like we talked about in the spongy bone, they also help to create those red blood cells and the white blood cells and platelets. So that's it for our lesson on skeletal anatomy and the function of the bone. Make sure you check out all the resources attached to this lesson. Now go out and be your best selves today. And as always, happy nursing.